Hello and welcome back to Chapter 4, One Victory is Enough, Part 5. And if you want to read along, go into the description and there will be a link there. So, yeah, and please send in critiques, like constructive critiques, please. Or like what you like about, like if you liked like any specific part of how I do some of these things. So, yeah. Now on to the part and finishing this chapter. The silence in the Batcave had weighed. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the kind of silence that made the air feel thick, forcing every breath to be slow, almost cautious. The soft beeping of Midoriya's heart monitor stood out like a mechanical pendulum, marking the time in cold, relentless intervals. Constant hum of the automated system came from somewhere high above, reverberating through the stone and metal walls, mixing with a faint scent of oil, dust, and ozone. When the sound of a drop of water falling in some distant tunnel seemed to echo for far too long, as if it didn't belong there, Dick stood still, leaning against the edge of the console, his eyes fixed on the unconscious boy before him. His shoulders were tense, but the control of his face masked the accumulated exhaustion. Wally, a few feet away, could feel the completely still. Couldn't keep completely still. He shifted his weight, adjusted his hands in his pockets, glanced around. Any movement seemed better than facing the weight of that moment. For a few moments, no one spoke. It was as if opening their mouths would shatter the fragile structure holding them upright. 2,100. Midoriya blinked a few times, making sure he heard right. 2,116. The number echoed in his head like a hammer. It wasn't just a distant date, it was the year he had lived every single day, every battle, every loss, and it was also a cruel reminder that his entire world was over 2 centuries away. The invisible weight seemed to press down in his chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. His stomach churned, and for a moment he was afraid he might throw up. He wiped his sweaty face, feeling his skin cold, but his forehead hot. Each heartbeat felt like a muffled blow against his ribs. How? Why? The question pounded in his mind, but it refused to find a voice. Memories of his final battle with Shigaraki came in just disjointed flashes, lights, screams, and the smell of dust and blood, and then nothing. Just darkness until he opened his eyes here. It wasn't just confusion. It was grief. Grief for what he had left behind, for everything he would likely never see again. All of them, he murmured, looking at Dick and Wally. Yes, Dick replied, his voice heavy. Without hesitation, Wally stepped back a little, hands in his pockets, pacing slowly across the cave as if he needed to keep moving to avoid being swallowed by the memories. Dick stayed beside the medical bed, solid as ever, but the tightness in his shoulder betrayed the effort it took not to break. I fought Shigaraki. I was in the middle of a war, and now I'm here, and you. He drew in a shaky breath, his throat tight. I lost everything. Dick took a slow breath before answering, and Midoriya noticed even a simple act seemed to cost him effort. The invasion started a few days ago, he said, speaking slowly, as if arranging each word carefully to keep from revealing too much. They came from all sides, the intergalactic army, ships, machines, shoulders. The Green Lantern Corps couldn't hold back. His tone wasn't just grim. It carried the weight of a memory that refused to die. Wally added, eyes fixed on the floor. There were things we'd never seen before, weapons that cut through the atmosphere like it was paper. Whole cities vanished in seconds, but without warning. Midoriya swallowed hard. And Superman? Wally looked up, a faint, humorless smile tugging at his lips. He was our best, the symbol of everything we had left to hope for. Dick nodded, but didn't meet anyone's gaze. And even then, it wasn't enough. The strange pause followed, the kind of silence that comes when there's nothing left to soften the truth. We fought, Dick continued, his voice low. All of us, to the end. Midoriya closed his eyes, trying to picture it, and he could. The world he'd known in 2216 had also been at the end of an era of peace. The world was the Paranormal Liberation Front, and its true leader, All for One, had shattered the society in mere days. It had taken countless heroes and friends from him, forced him to leave UA, and now it seemed had cost him his entire world. What happened? He asked, asking for the answer. Wally sighed and turned, leaning against one of the workbenches. One by one, they fell. First, the strongest, then the rest. Dick finished the thought, his gaze unflinching. The two of us, and a few others, held on until the very end. He paused, breathing deeply, the pain evident even in his controlled posture. But when we were about to die, you appeared. Midoriya frowned, trying to make sense of it. Me? The word came out raw, almost without strength. Wally nodded slowly. Yeah, you just appeared out of nowhere, right in the middle of the chaos, and with you came the other guy, the villain. Dick leaned slightly forward, resting his hand on the edge of the table. His gaze locked on the boys as if trying to see straight through him. We did what we could to hold the line, but what happened after? That was you. Midoriya felt his breath quicken, a chill running across his skin. What did I do? Dick didn't look away, and his voice cut through the air like cold steel. You killed him. Midoriya froze. The sound of the heart monitor seemed to grow louder, marking each beat like a war drum. Shigaraki? He asked, barely above a whisper. Yeah, Dick confirmed without blinking. We saw it. It wasn't quick, it wasn't clean, but you ended him. Wally, who had been silent until then, spoke up, his tone a strange mix of respect and unease. And that's what saved the world, or what's left of it. Midoriya slowly sank back against the cot, the weight of the revelation pressing down on his shoulders. The feeling Shigaraki has been his goal for so long, but hearing he had done it under such brutal circumstances in the world that wasn't even his own left a bitter taste. Wally picked up the remote for one of the screens and switched it on. Maybe you need to see this. The image came with static, then stabilized into a light news feed. Immediately, the sound came of a helicopter silence, and distant voices filled the cavern, breaking the heavy silence. The reporter spoke with quick, uneven breaths, the microphone trembling slightly in his hand. And we repeat, all Indian ships previously responsible for the global devastation fell from the sky simultaneously. No warning signs, no detected weapon or coordinated strike. They just fell. The camera shook as it swept over a smoke-filled avenue in London, where twisted chunks of alien metal still sparked. In Tokyo, a wreck the size of a building crushed entire blocks. In Nairobi, crowds gathered around a shattered hall that just hours ago had been splitting death. Midoriya kept his eyes on the screen, taking in every image as if he could smell the smoke and scorched metal from where he lay. The reporter continued. We have no scientific explanation yet, But officials and the survivors believed this was the result of the final effort of the heroes who remained. The scene shifted to New York. A scorched red cape hung from the top of a light post, swaying gently in the wind. A group of soot-covered children painted Justice League symbols on broken walls with pieces of charcoal. In Mumbai, a boy knelt on the cracked street, drawing the Flash emblem in bright chalk. In Sydney, firefighters raised an American flag on and another with the League members atop a destroyed building. Each scene was a portrait of a world desperately trying to believe there was still a future. Midoriya felt a knot tighten in his throat. Victories didn't smell like triumph, and smelled like ashes. The camera cut to an anchor, his voice thick with emotion. Humanity owes its survival to these heroes. Midoriya blinked a few times, trying to push away the sting in his eyes. What he saw on screen felt bigger than any word he'd ever thought. His world had fallen, but this one looked shattered down to silence. He took a breath, but his voice came out almost in a whisper. You saved the world. Dick immediately looked away as if the words were just another weight on already tired shoulders. His hand clenched into a fist, and when he spoke, his voice was dry. At what cost? Wally let out a short, humorless laugh. His eyes were damp, his smile bitter. At least we won. But even that worst felt hollow. Silence returned, dense and heavy. Midoriya looked back at the images. Children without parents, families clutching broken picture frames, a woman hugging the burned uniform of someone who would never return. He forced himself to swallow, his voice tight. What would you do now? Dick took his time answering. He stared at the console in front of him, eyes fixed on the buttons as if searching for an answer there. Finally, he lifted his head. We survived. The word hung in the air, raw. And we'll make sure this world keeps going. Somehow. Then he looked directly at Midoriya, his gaze cutting through any doubt that the boy might have had. And you, Izuku, you'll have to decide what you're going to do. Midoriya felt the weight of each syllable. The promise he carried in his heart, to the one to become a symbol, now felt farther away, but no less necessary. Maybe even more urgent. He drew a breath and nodded, a quiet spark in his eyes. I will help. Wally raised an eyebrow, trying to soften the moment with his tired smile. Of course you will, hero. But even there, deep in the cave, the echo of that newfound commitment felt like a silent vow between three survivors who wouldn't let the last hope die. Midoriya lowered his gaze. He remembered All Might's word, a tearful promise. You can become a symbol. Even that here, in this fractured timeline, in a world of not his own. The promise still beat in his chest. He felt the weight of the uniform he no longer wore but still carried it on his shoulders. The legacy of one for all. The legacy of an entire generation who believed in something greater. The promise wasn't dead. Not yet. Dick turned back to the console, his fingers gliding over the keys with the precision of someone who had memorized every command long ago. The sharp click of keys echoed through the cavern, almost like a metronome marking the start of something new. Wally, leaning against the workbench nearby, crossed his arms as he watched. Everything his tired eyes was a focused vigilance, as if he didn't want to miss a single movement. Midoriya remained seated, his gaze shifting between the two of them. His breathing had steadied, but inside his chest, his heart still pounded, not out of fear, but from the weight of knowing that his choice to stay and help bound him to this world as much as his own promise ever had. We don't know if there's anyone else, Dick said without turning. Maybe it's just us. The words reverberated in the cold air of the cave. But if it is, he paused, glancing briefly at Midoriya and then Wally. Then we have to make their sacrifice mean something. A brief silence followed. Not heavy like before, but steady, like the moment right before a handshake. Midoriya nodded. Wally nodded. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them needed to say anything more. Just 3 names. 3 broken stories. 3 hearts still willing to fight. In the heart of the Batcave, beneath the hum of the machines and the echoes of memories, a bond was forged, one that needed no ceremony, sealed in loss, strengthened by grief, and sustained by the relentless refusal to give up, to give in. And that was the end of chapter 4. Even no, not when victory isn't enough. God, that hit like a truck. That hit like a train running over. But God dang, this is a very emotional reading. I haven't put this much emotion in anything when reading anything since, well, actually in a long time. So this was a very satisfying reading for me, especially with how the how much emotion I put in. And yeah, after this, I do not know what's going on, so it is impossible for me to give spoilers since I haven't read after chapter 4. So yeah, and I don't have really any notes on this part. So, so yeah, just go in the link of the description. This is After the Fall by Innocent with one N underscore reader. Check them out. They're fantastic writing, fantastic story, and everything. And yeah, bye.